2, 1, here we go. All right, welcome to the Dancer's Beat. I'm your host, Brett Davenport. This podcast takes you behind the curtain of the competitive dance world, where we'll talk with some of the top names of the world of dance today, judges, teachers, former winners, and people behind the scenes who make these events happen. Today's episode is brought to you by the Universal Ballet Competition. UBC is one of the top student ballet competitions in the country. And now with our trip to Shanghai, I think we can say the world, helping dancers grow through mentorship, performance, and opportunity. Since UBC's first season, we have awarded millions in scholarships and helped dancers connect with some of the top schools and companies around the world. UBC is more than a competition. It is a community helping dancers reach their goals. And today we are very fortunate to have some of the preeminent names in the world of dance. I'm going to start with Mr. Michael Waldrop. He has toured the world with Theater Koblenz and State Street Ballet. He is a renowned choreographer and masterclass teacher. He's currently the contemporary program manager at Ballet West Academy in Salt Lake City, Utah. Please welcome Mr. Michael Waldrop. And then we have the lovely Evelelyn Cisneros. She is a former prima ballerina with San Francisco Ballet. She had an illustrious dance career, and she is currently the director at Ballet West Academy in Salt Lake City, Utah. And finally, we have Mr. Wes Chapman. He is formerly the American Ballet Theater, where he was a protege of Mikhail Baryshnikov. He is the chairman of the Alabama School of Fine Arts, and he is the UBC Grand Jury Panel Chairman. Please welcome Mr. Wes Chapman. All right, it wasn't quite the intro I give on Sunday night at the awards, but there it is. So this episode in this series is going to be about transparency. We're going to start off with transparency and judging. And Wes, I would like to start with you. We're going to talk first about the UBC technology and the impact on the judging process. But one thing I always notice, Wes, that you are very deliberate about mentioning during the awards when we're handing out the scholarship and the special awards like the Legacy Award, for instance, you're always mentioning, not always, but you frequently will mention, this is what the computer has come up with. You make it very clear that this is just how it is. This is how the scores came out. So if you could talk a little bit about the UBC technology, why it makes our company unique, and why you feel it's so important to have that kind of transparency.
Yeah, thanks, Brett, for that question. It's a great question. I feel like our transparency is important because transparency is what I would want as a competitor, and I think everybody would want as a competitor. And with our technology, all of our scores go into the computer, and then they are totaled by the computer, and then they're ranked also by the computer in terms of top 15 and so forth. We do not change scores in the judge room. We feel like it's important for us to keep up with that we are not, doing things that feel like to the competitor that might not be honest. And that's very important to us. And then, we are able to talk into the computer so that the competitor has feedback from our judges as the variation is taking place. So often you can give a correction while it's being recorded, and the dancer can actually see what you're talking about in real time.
And of course, I've had judges say that they appreciate the fact that we announce the adjudication right after the dance. Evelelyn or Michael, do you want to also talk about the transparency and what makes UBC unique in that regard?
I think it's wonderful to be able to talk to the dancer while you're watching them perform, because there's all those intricacies that the ballet art form has. So you're basically coaching them. They're having a coaching session with Wes and Michael and myself while they're performing, and they can tell exactly what part of their variation is happening because of the music. And then each one of us assesses them by their technical prowess, if they're using all their technical facilities, musicality, their artistry, all of that, and make independent evaluations and scores for each one, and then they go to the main computer, and then the main computer decides where they fall in the ranking.
Yeah. Michael?
And just to speak to the contemporary side, I know all of us on the panel are very dedicated in providing feedback and lots of feedback in real time. So there's so many transitions and intricacies and uh, weight and the plie and the like all of these little moments that we're all so dedicated in making sure that those corrections are substantial, that those corrections are providing meaningful feedback for these dancers. It's a lot of work to prepare for a competition. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of coaching. For us to be able to really provide real-time feedback is important to all of us on the jury.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then another thing about this podcast is that's what we also want to do with this podcast is that our hope is that dancers will watch this, see the inside workings of the competition to some degree, and to see what you're all looking for so they can show up as the best versions of themselves, giving them the best chance at each competition. So that kind of leads me to the next question. Wes and Evelyn will speak more to the classical division. Michael will speak more to contemporary. But when this is kind of a broad question, maybe what are some things that you're generally looking for, and what are some things that you consistently see that maybe the dancers don't realize? And this can also go to class, not just competition. But what are some things that what are you looking for, and what are some things that you consistently see that dancers are maybe doing that are not giving themselves the best opportunity to shine in both class and competition? We'll start with Wes again.
Okay, another great question. Our competitors are young, and ballet, particularly, all dance particularly, takes a lot of rehearsal time. It takes a lot of studio time, coaching time. The things that I talk about frequently with young dancers, because it's some of the things that come later, training and in the career, are transitional steps and using rotation as well. So I always say, everybody's able to do more now, and they're jumping higher, and they're doing 5 pirouettes, and almost everybody can do it to some degree. So what sets you apart is important to me, and that's the details. And these are things that adults are good at because we spend more time at it. But I always emphasize, think about when you're running to the corner. Are you using your rotation, or are you running in parallel? Are you using your feet in the transitions? Are you really refining those moments? Are you looking at them with your coach? And I'll say things like, go back and look at this video, and you'll see where you could rotate the back leg and tendu, and you could make that transition look better, because we're sitting so close to them that we're like right on top of them and can see everything, which is not to anybody's advantage in the long run. But I do think that putting a little attention towards those issues starts to help improve them, and it's awareness. And part of what we like to do as
Okay. You froze there for a second, but I think we got it. Did you want to jump in, Evelyn?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
In addition to what Wes is saying, I mean, the transitions are really important. The use of, classical ballet technique is based on the outward rotation of the hips. So that needs to happen every step that they're doing. But also, point work is a whole nother element that Wes didn't mention. And it's, the ladies being able to get all the way up over their boxes. And oftentimes we see the ladies, and they're not getting up over their point shoes. And, ow, it hurts because it's easier to get all the way up on your point shoes and then roll down from there. So that's something that I encourage them. Sometimes I'll say, I would consider getting some different shoes. So these shoes don't really show your feet that well. And then the musicality, and I mean, the art form is so encompassing. And as Wes said, Oftentimes, like just recently, we saw skilled dancers, and they're 11 and they're on point and they're doing beautiful work. And that'll be the time when we'll look at each other and say, they're 11. Oh my gosh. And that does change a little bit of your perspective on the expectation on a beautiful 11-year-old talented student. So we try and take everything into consideration. Also, I think what UBC does so beautifully is encourage the dancers. Like, we never say, maybe you should think of doing something else, or negative. It's always like a positive reinforcement. And sometimes, we have to look deep to find positive reinforcements, but we really, really try to do that.
All right. And Michael, in the world of contemporary, do you have something to offer in that
So
regard?
the beautiful is the connection of contemporary movement into classical ballet. These are not two isolated worlds. What Wes is talking about, what Evelyn is talking about, ties completely into contemporary movement, just in a different shape. So as Wes is saying about transitions, I'm looking for that. I say all the time, like, what's the thread that puts these shapes together? Like, how are you building and constructing the sentence? That thread is what I want to see clearly. As Evelyn and Wes are both talking about the definition of shape through their legs, I'm looking for the same thing. I'm looking for defined parallel movement. I'm looking for, if you're rotated, you're showcasing rotation clearly. How do your transitions showcase those shapes clearly? And of course, as we get into contemporary movement, there's a little ambiguity based on what the choreographer was intending for that dancer, but the dancer showing that clearly is a great skill. And whether that's defined as parallel or turned out, that's what I'm looking for. I talk about the use of plie. Evelyn has to hear me talk about this every single day, but the definition of plie, it's in the three parts of the legs. This is not just bent knees. This is the hips, the knees, the fronts of the ankles. That ties into ballet. And then I want to see that in contemporary movement. How do I use the weight of the pelvis? How do I create clarity and shape? So someone who's watching choreography who doesn't know what that next step is, I'm very clear and know exactly what that dancer intends to do with their body. So I think there's a beautiful connection between contemporary and ballet that we're able to see at UBC. And yeah, the dancer showcasing that, I think, is what makes it really successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Evelyn was saying, sometimes I don't come from the dance world. I'm an actor. I've been in this world for some time now. But I will often see a performer and look down at their age and be shocked that someone who is 10, 11 years old is not only able to do the movements, but to tell the the an emotional story and to have the emotional depth at 11 years old to do Nakia's death or something like that. It's really, really impressive. So is there anything, and anyone can chime in at first, are there things that you're seeing consistently perhaps that, for lack of a better term, might be a pet peeve, but not to be negative, but just things that you are seeing Michael's ready to go. If you're seeing something consistently in classes or competitions and you think to yourself, man, this performer is wonderful, she does this great or he does this great, but there's just this thing that I keep seeing, or there's something here that I really wish I could just tell them right now, maybe change this or maybe don't do that. Is there Michael, do you want to start with those kind of things?
Oh, I have pet peeves.
Yeah.
For me, floor work, the use of the hands, the way that we connect with the floor is so important to me. So when I see a dancer doing floor work and maybe it's just the fingertips connected or there's no actual pressure against the floor, that's definitely something that I look for. I think definition of the legs and parallel or turned out is another pet peeve, if that's what you want to call it. That has to be clear. Again, I don't know the choreography, so the clarity is what like brings me into your world. And then I'm not sure I'd call it a pet peeve, but a thing that's important to me is the dancers connected to the story of what's being told. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a narrative, but the dancer has to be connected into the world that they're trying to bring us into. So if this just becomes a performance of steps in a sequence, then that is just movement in a sequence. But I need to be brought into a world. I tell all of the dancers that I work with, what's the story that you're trying to tell? And the more clarity you can think of in preparation for the competition, the clearer that will be on stage. Are you by yourself? Is it dark? Is it light? Is there any obstructions? Are there people around you? Is it hot? Is it cold? The more that we can literally create this environment, now that dancer stepping onto the stage is able to bring that story to life. So those are, yeah, important for me.
Yeah. Wes or Evelyn, do you have anything in that regard? Wes? Oh,
For me, it's stage. For me, it's stage presence. Amongst the other things we've been talking about, you know, is the person coming out and giving a performance? Are they engaging me? It's related to exactly what Michael just said. Are they coming out? Is it a smiley dance? Is it a less smiley dance? Do they know that? That's another question. And so sometimes I'll say, performance, and that's important to me. Um, the other thing is sometimes I'll say, don't be afraid to turn on your smile. Show me who you are. Show me your stage presence.
yeah. Evelyn?
Yeah, I would totally agree with what Wes is saying. We must remember that it is a performing art, that the performance is like the cherry on the top of what we've been working on every single day in class, at the bar work, in the center floor work. And, portraying a character is one of the most fun things you can do. I always tell my students, it was like, who is this person? Is she a princess? Is she a peasant? Is she, happy? Is she sad? And watching them decide how to show that character is really important. And it pushes them, it makes them think, it makes them develop who, their Juliet is, who their Cinderella is, and, how they would portray that. And I think it makes all the difference. Certainly for the audience member, it's huge. So, in that way, to push the dancers to do that, and reminding them, okay, you are Cinderella, and you take this PK arabesque and your legs are turned up, but then you come down and your legs are parallel. So it needs to be consistent all the way through. All those little things that we try and pull from them.
Yeah. And
I
like,
would like to.
again,
I just want
yeah,
to. Can I say one other thing? I
absolutely. Yeah.
just Evelyn Cisneros was an expert in that arena. So thank you for sharing that with our dancers, because you had that wonderful ability of telling a story and changing characters, and I saw you dance many times. So I just wanted to say thank you for your artistry and for sharing that with our dancers.
Thank you, Evelyn. Yeah. And again, as an appreciator of art, but not necessarily by no means an expert in dance, that when Wes, you were talking about stage presence. A lot of times when I'm thinking about the adjective I'm going to use to describe the dance afterwards, so often the immediate stage presence that a dancer shows the moment that they walk on stage sets the entire tone for the dance, for the performance. And for me, as an audience member who may be more of a layman, like many of the people in the audience, the teachers or more parents and things like that, when the story is being told, I get so caught up in the emotionality of that I'm totally taken in. And so I think those were all very good points, and I think that's all very helpful for dancers. One thing we wanted to address some frequent, issues that are brought to our attention behind the scenes at UBC. One of them that we get very often is that teachers, studio directors, and dancers are often they often are perplexed as to why, for instance, in the semifinals, I did this routine. I did everything, the best. I did everything, and then I went to the Grand Prix. Say in the semifinals, I got, a very high score. And I went to the Grand Prix and I did the same thing, or I improved upon it and did even better. Yet my score at the Grand Prix finals was lower than my semifinal score. That is something that we hear frequently behind the scenes. Um, can you each touch on why that is? Why the semifinals carries, or why the Grand Prix carries different weight than the semifinals in terms of scoring? Do you want to start, Evelyn? Did you want to start?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, I will. I think we have to keep in mind that we all do the semifinals all around the country, and then we select those that are extraordinary, and then we invite them to come to the Grand Prix. So the platform from which these students are performing is at a higher level right away because we're picking the best from all around the country and then we're bringing them to the stage. So it makes sense that the scoring is different, and there are all so many really good dancers that the standard is higher, and so all the details are that much more important. So I mean, and the thing is with this art form, repetition is what it's all about. You're a principal dancer with a company and you're rehearsing every day for like 2, 3 weeks before you actually get to the stage. And these dancers have the opportunity too to get their variation, to do it in a regional, and then to keep working on it and then bring it back in the finals. And because of that extra work that they've been doing on it, all those little details should be really addressed.
yeah. Michael and Wes, do you want to also comment on maybe your differences between when you're judging a semifinal event and the Grand Prix?
Yeah, I'll just build on what Evelyn said. The sheer amount of time for me is a consideration. Those dancers who just were in Dayton, Ohio, we were in Dayton, Ohio. That means that they performed in October, and then they're going to Grand Prix in May. So how did you take the feedback? Like we can all it, I'm not sure we're focused on it, but we can hear what the other judges are saying around us. So I have a sense of what Kelly King would say. I have a sense of what Lydia would say. I have a sense of kind of what other judges would choose to emphasize in that, and I know what my standard is. So what how did you take the feedback from semifinals, and how did you apply that for Grand Prix? So that for me, there's a natural build just in time. Plus, I know the type of feedback that's given at UBC. How did you take that feedback, apply it, and then how can you show it differently on stage? So that for me could be the difference between semifinals and Grand Prix.
I think that's very helpful for a performer to know. Yeah. Wes, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, the dancers that make it to the Grand Prix, they have to understand that often they're being judged by a different panel that
That's true.
saw them in the semifinal. So those people are looking with three sets of fresh eyes
Right.
that may have not seen them yet. So the dancer and the teachers and the choreographers all have to remember that it's live,
Mhm.
and it's how the judges feel at that moment with that live performance. And often the dancer has improved, but they may not know that because they haven't seen that dancer yet.
Right.
I think we want to always be, um, in the moment in terms of trying to improve. And sometimes things happen on the stage and you've got to make it work. And we take that into account as well. So, maybe you didn't have your best turn and, how did you continue? Those things come into play. But I think the dancers and the teachers need to remember that our judge panels are often different by the time they get to the finals.
Yeah. And the Grand Prix is quite a magnificent event. I mean, the Grand Prix we had in Chicago was, I mean, absolutely beautiful. The venue was amazing. The dancers were amazing, and it is something akin to something you would see at Lincoln Center or something. I mean, it is a much more elevated event, and I think that's some valuable insight because that is something that we do here quite a bit. So let's move on to our next question. Um, how should dancers, families, coaches, everyone involved view their scores, and what should their outlook on scoring be? And a quick anecdote: we have our lovely artistic director Lisette has told the story about it was an event that she did not get the best score that she was capable of, but she brought her entirety to the stage, and she ended up getting a scholarship that someone who was ahead of her did not get. So maybe scoring isn't necessarily everything at an event. Uh, and maybe we could comment on how the everyone involved, the teachers, coaches, dancers, should view scoring. Evelyn?
Thank you, Brett. I think in preparing your student for a competition, I think it's really very, very important to tell the student that they're not going there to get, the legacy award. They are going there to do their very best. And by all the rehearsals and all the coaching that you've done, you are trying to prepare them for that. I have seen people just be devastated by poor scores. I think taking it as it's given from the judges, it's given as a support, as a suggestion, as for help, because the students and the instructors, even, or the coaches, don't have the same kind of experience that Wes and Michael and I have. So when we're watching it, we're thinking, in the broader scope, like in the broader ballet world, how is this going to work and what do they need to do to make it even better? So we really try and feed into them to make it better. If I were a coach and I heard the recording for the students, I would certainly take what was given and implement them, and sitting down with the student afterward and really talking about it and saying, oh, see, this is what they're talking about when they talk. All of a sudden they're like, oh, you need to turn, you need to use your outward rotation more. It's because of that. And they're like, oh, okay. And so next time, they do that step, they'll row down with their heel forward and, all those things. I mean, I believe it would be really so beneficial and so positive to take the instruction or the suggestions that the judges have for that student and walk it through with them, and then take it into the studio and try and implement as many as you can.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I've seen the same thing. I've seen dancers devastated by a score, but then you come to find out that the dancer is battling the flu or something, or they had they're dealing with an injury or something. And you want to, especially as an adult, when you see a younger person going through that, you would like, you want them to give themselves some grace that, it is a high pressure live performance and we're all dealing with things on the day. And yeah, and to not be quite so devastated when those things happen. Michael, do you want to go next?
Yeah, a score is just a score. Like that's what like just keeps repeating inside of my head. The score is literally just a number. The priority and what I prioritize and what I prioritize for the students is the feedback that's being received. We go in the studio and we practice choreography, we practice technique, we practice these things on the daily. So in the same way that muscle is exercised, so performance needs to be exercised as well. Like we need the opportunity to be on stage, to feel what adrenaline feels like, to feel what an audience feels like, to feel what stage lights feel like. So I think the score is really just a number. I think the feedback that you're receiving is the priority. So I'd say, especially for contemporary movement, things don't always go as planned, and that's ballet also. But I have a little leeway with what's going to be my transition out of this. How can I find a way to do something, even if it wasn't intended? And then I'm receiving feedback on how that was received from the judges. How did the audience see what happened? I may not have any idea. And that's the beauty of what it is. If I'm only looking at a score and the number becomes the priority, we lose out on all of the feedback. This is literally a practice of being on stage, of performing, and then we literally get feedback of what that looked like to people watching for the first time. So for me, the number, it's like literally just the idea of a competition. It's what creates a hierarchy that we're able to use as a standard across all of the dancers. The feedback is the most important thing.
That's important, very important insight. I think a score is just a number, and the feedback is really what you should be focused on. That's, I think, very helpful for a dancer. Wes, your thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to say a couple of things. The scholarship thing, in terms of somebody had a higher score, but the lower score got the scholarship. Well, sometimes like Evelyn and Michael are at the competition, and they're looking for two different things potentially. Um, I'm helping with the other scholarships for people that are not represented there, and knowing the flavor of some of those schools, I'm trying to match those people up regardless of their scores so that they have the opportunity to improve over a summer course that will give them the best chance to shine. And I want to say this, and I know that Evelyn and Michael feel the same way, as we get very attached to the dancers. I do. And I teach them in class, and then I see them on the
Me and Evelyn are
stage.
still talking about dancers that we saw this weekend.
I know,
We
and
love them so
and the
much.
kiddos need to understand that, because we're emotionally attached to them to some degree, because we've taught them, we've seen them dance, we saw them in the semifinals last year, whatever. Um, and I think our whole goal is to elevate these kids from where they are to their next place. And not everybody's going to be the top dancer in the world. They know that. We all know that. But there's no reason that we should stop striving for that. And I think that's key to UBC, and part of its heartbeat is that we want to elevate each dancer from where they are to their next level, not necessarily to be the top winner in the competition.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point, and that's something that we really strive to instill with the dancers, is that you are the judges, and that comes with it a certain amount of weight and everything like that. But we really want to the dancers to get to see you as uh, fellow artists who are who have been there, who have been to the mountaintop, and are now rooting for you.
Yeah.
And that's it may be tough in the moment to see that, but maybe something like this podcast can kind of help them see that when they come to competition, that you're not, yes, you are judging and you are doing the scores, but every single one of you wants the best for every dancer that goes up on stage. And I think that's a really beautiful point. I think that those,
One thing,
yes,
sorry, may I add one thing
absolutely.
to Wes?
Yeah.
That was so beautifully said, and I agree with every single point. Another element that I have seen are, excuse me, are students who have a very large school. They're involved in training at a very large school. Those students may not get the opportunity to actually dance by themselves on stage. And so I have seen this competition be that vehicle where they can go through, when you're on stage by yourself, there's tremendous nerves, there's tremendous pressure that you put on yourself to be successful. How you manage that, how you manage, if you slip, how you manage when you come on stage and then the wrong music starts to play, how you recover from those things are all elements that you need to learn as a live performer. So this can give students an opportunity to really explore what it's like to be out on stage by yourself and be holding the ballet together, because it's a lot of stress and strain, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for these students to have that experience.
I think that makes me think of something else, that sometimes you will see a dancer fall or make a mistake. Um, it happens to everyone, and I see a dancer get really devastated about it because they didn't perfect what they wanted to do. But then oftentimes you'll see a performer act as if nothing happened, and they so maybe could you each of you touch on that a little bit? What if you were them up on stage, what would you want them to be experiencing or thinking, or how would you want them to deal with that moment when a mistake happens? whoever wants. Wes, do you want to start?
We've all
Oh, Michael.
we've all been them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, Wes, you go ahead. Yeah.
No, you're right, Michael. We all have. I've been there many times, and and as a young person, but also as a professional. And our teachers of our generation were like, "Don't quit, don't stop. What are you doing? Keep going." That kind of thing. And that's it. I mean, there's really nothing else to explain other than um, try not to show that you've had your disaster.
Yeah.
Get up and keep going. And I think that's really kind of it. Maybe you other two have some better advice.
Michael, did you want to expand on that?
Um, I, I will say for myself, I have never marked someone down for a fall. I've never marked someone down for, oh, there was a slip or something happens. I care about what the response to that was. And that can definitely affect the score. So you slip and you fall, and then everything becomes smaller in terms of the movement. And I miss the reach of the extremities, and everything feels a little cautious and played just in space. That can definitely affect the score that I would give. We've all had those moments where things did not go as planned, but what was your recovery? That's the thing that matters the most to me. I remember a moment in the company in Germany, and there was this stressful back attitude turn moment that was, stress. Definitely didn't go as planned. And that was my moment of everything felt like it was all building up from there, and then one thing affected the next, into the next, into the next, and you get off stage and you're like, like didn't go as I wanted it to go. My artistic director came up to me and said, well, in so many words, things happen.
Yeah.
The more that you let those things that happen continue to build onto the next, that now affects the whole performance. Literally let it go. This is live performance. Things happen. When things don't go as planned, if I'm able to let it go and embrace everything else that's coming up, the beauty of the performance still shines through. If I fixate on the one thing that didn't go as planned, that now starts to affect everything. This becomes this huge snowball effect that can affect your performance. So I say enjoy that things happen, whether they're planned or not. And if we can let go of those things that weren't perfect and enjoy the live performance for what it is, your audience will too.
Yeah. Evelyn?
That's absolutely right. I totally agree with that perspective. I know for myself, as I was um, in the company for many, many, many years. And I got to the point where one time I came out as a roomba and I slipped on the step on my entrance. And the first thing that popped into mind was like, oh, okay, there's my mistake. Now it's over, and now everything else is going to be fine. Just exactly how Michael and Wes were saying, you have to put it behind you. How you deal with everything else that's come up, it's huge. And I have found, because I've fallen down many times on stage in front of a full audience, they are more on your side. After you fall and you recover and you go through and you finish well, they love it more because they feel like, yes, I'm on your side. That was so good how you recovered. So you can really use that
Yeah.
to, inspire you to go on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a great metaphor for life is how you get back up, and what you said is true. It's hard to explain to a performer when they're trying to be perfect, but you'd be amazed at how much everybody is rooting for you up on stage. No one wants to see you fall and stay down or shrink, as Michael said. Everyone is rooting for you. And yes, there is a natural human instinct to have a bit of empathy for someone. We've all made mistakes, we've all fallen down, and it is so inspiring to see someone get back up there and perform beautifully after that. Yes, I think you all had amazing insight into that. The next area
Can I
we
say
want
one
to,
other thing?
yes,
I'm sorry
please.
to.
No,
I just it
anytime
came to
anyone
me.
wants to jump in, feel free.
Well, and oftentimes our personal perspective of our performance is not what the audience saw.
Right.
And several times in my ABT career, I came backstage or I was finishing, and the coaches would come backstage, and I'd be like, "Gosh, that may be the worst performance I've ever given." And then they'll go, "Are you serious? That was so engaging, and you were so wonderful." And they'll say things like that, and I'm like, "God, it's not matching up with how I felt." So sometimes we invoke an emotion in our audience that we don't realize.
Yeah.
And it's often not to do with how many pirouettes I did, or if I stumbled
Right.
out of that double tour, or whatever it was that, got me going on the downward spiral. And then, you go to the stage door and there are people at the stage door going, "Thank you, your performance brought me such joy today." And then I'm like, well, okay, maybe I need to think about this differently as an
Yeah.
artist. It's not about perfection as a technical dancer, but more of what am I bringing to the audience. And again,
All right. Thank you for joining us for the first episode of the Dancers Beat podcast. We are so sorry that it got cut short. We were having such great discussion with our fantastic judges, Wes Chapman, Evelelyn Cisneros, and Michael Waldrop. It turns out that we ran into a bit of a technical issue with my laptop. It does not have the computing power necessary to operate a lengthy podcast with that software. So we have remedied the situation. I've moved everything to my iMac, which will be able to handle future podcasts with no problem. So we look forward to picking up that discussion. We're going to get into part 2 of our transparency series. That was part 1. We got into transparency with judging. Now we're going to get into transparency when it comes to the scholarships and special awards. And we're going to pick up again with those 3 judges, Wes Chapman, Evelelyn Cisneros, and Michael Waldrop. Again, so sorry for the technical issue, but we've taken care of it. Thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of the Dancers Beat podcast. We had a great time. We hope that you learned something and you had a great time as well. Please follow our social media, the Universal Ballet Competition on Instagram, for information about when this podcast will drop. It'll drop on YouTube and Spotify. Thank you again for joining us. Sorry for the technical issue. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again, and we'll see you next time on the Dancers Beat.